My husband cheated with my son's 18-year-old girlfriend, and I was shocked to discover all of his dirty secrets. Before watching the video, write where you are watching it in the comments, subscribe and like so that more people can watch this video. Enjoy. I'm Emily, 42 years old, female. I'm sitting here shaking as I write this because I don't even know how to start processing what just happened in my life. My hands are trembling and the house feels like a crime scene. Like if I touch anything, I'll contaminate the evidence of the betrayal I just uncovered. I've been married to David, 45, for almost 20 years. We met in our 20s back when I still thought forever was something you could build with love alone. He was charming, funny in that kind of disarming way, the guy who could walk into a room and leave with 10 new friends. He always made me feel like I was the lucky one, like I'd snagged the man everyone else wanted. We built a life together. Our son, Jason, who just turned 18, is the center of it. Jason's a good kid. Quiet, thoughtful, a little awkward around girls, but sweet. He just started dating this girl, Kayla, also 18. She's beautiful in that fragile way some girls are when they're barely adults. Big eyes, soft voice, polite in that rehearsed way kids are when they want parents to like them. I thought she was good for him. She came over often, hung around the kitchen, laughed at my husband's dumb jokes in a way I thought was just teenager flattery. Now I see it differently. The first red flag hit me like a whisper, something small I almost brushed off. Jason would go to bed and I noticed Kayla lingering downstairs. Dave would pour her a glass of soda like she was a guest of honor, and they'd chat in the living room after Jason had gone upstairs. I remember thinking, weird, but maybe she feels more comfortable with us than her own parents. David said he was just trying to make her feel welcome. But then there were little things. His phone lighting up late at night, him leaving the room to answer. I'd hear Kayla's name in his casual stories more than a dad should be saying it. Kayla told me she wants to major in psychology, or Kayla thinks this show is hilarious. At first I chalked it up to him trying to connect with Jason's world. Then came the night that gutted me. Jason and Kayla had supposedly gone to the movies. Jason came home early, storming in, face pale and fists clenched. He wouldn't even look at me when he said, "Mom, where's Dad?" I told him David was out running errands. Jason laughed, a sharp, broken sound I'll never forget, and muttered, "Yeah, errands." He threw his keys on the counter and locked himself in his room. Something in my stomach turned cold. I checked David's location on the family app. We share it for emergencies. And there it was. His little dot parked outside Kayla's house. That was the moment. My world tilted. My husband wasn't just cheating. He was cheating with my son's girlfriend. And the sickest part? I didn't even know yet how deep his betrayal went. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, every creak of the house making me flinch. David came home around midnight, humming under his breath like he'd just been out grabbing milk. I watched him slip into bed beside me, his arm brushing mine like nothing was wrong, like he wasn't blowing up our entire family for some teenage girl. I wanted to scream, to claw at him, to demand answers right there, but Jason's room was down the hall. My son was already shattered, and I couldn't let him hear me unravel too. The next morning, Jason wouldn't look at his father. He grabbed a granola bar and left for school without a word. David tried to laugh it off. Teenagers, huh? But his voice had this nervous edge, like he knew Jason had seen something. I felt like I was trapped in a play where everyone was pretending, and I was the only one who knew the script had changed. I finally broke when I found Kayla's sweater. It was draped over the back of the recliner in our den, a baby blue knit thing I knew wasn't mine. I picked it up, smelled it, and felt my stomach churn. Vanilla body spray. Jason's girlfriend sweater in my husband's chair. I confronted David that evening. My voice was shaking so badly it didn't even sound like me. Why is Kayla's sweater in here? He froze. Actually froze. Like a deer in headlights. Then he laughed. Said, "Oh, she must have left it when she and Jason were watching TV." Except Jason hadn't been in the den for weeks. I knew that because the remote still had dust on it. I pressed harder. "Are you sleeping with her?" His smile cracked. He went red, then pale. He tried to spin it, saying I was paranoid, saying I was imagining things. But then his voice cracked, and he said, "She came on to me, Emily. You don't understand." I swear something in me snapped. He wasn't denying it. He was justifying it. My husband, the man I thought I'd grow old with, was blaming a girl barely out of high school for his inability to keep his hands off her. I threw his phone at him. It hit the wall, cracked the screen, and I screamed, "She's Jason's girlfriend. She's his girlfriend." That was the first time I saw him unhinged. He grabbed the broken phone, hurled it into the sink, and started pacing like a caged animal. His voice rose, ugly and sharp. "You don't get it. I've been invisible in this house for years. You only care about Jason. She makes me feel alive again." Alive. He said that while destroying our son's life. And just when I thought I couldn't be more disgusted, I stumbled into the digital graveyard of his dirty secrets. His laptop was open on the counter. I don't even know what I was looking for, maybe proof I wasn't crazy. And I found it. A folder buried inside his files, labeled innocently as receipts. But they weren't receipts. They were screenshots, messages, emails, pictures. Kayla wasn't the first. I wish I could scrub my eyes clean of what I saw on that laptop. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the damn thing when I clicked open that receipts folder. At first I thought maybe it was porn. Gross, but not earth-shattering compared to what I already knew. But it wasn't strangers on a screen. It was women. Real women. Local women. Some of the messages went back years. Women from his work, women he met at the gym, even one I recognized from our neighborhood Facebook group. Screenshots of flirty text pictures they'd sent him. Nothing full nudes, but enough to make my stomach roll. One woman had even sent him a selfie in our kitchen while I was at work. The worst part? The way he talked about me. Buried in the exchanges were complaints about me being cold, about me nagging, about how I let myself go after Jason was born. He told one woman that he felt trapped in his marriage but stayed for appearances. Another he called his escape. But Kayla's folder, that was different. It was fresh. I opened it and there she was, smiling selfies, cutesy messages about how she felt special around him. And him? He called her baby girl. Told her she was more mature than the boys her age. He promised to take care of her, to show her how a real man loves. My stomach lurched. This wasn't just cheating, this was grooming. He was manipulating an 18-year-old who trusted him because he was Jason's dad. I slammed the laptop shut so hard it echoed through the kitchen. Jason came down from his room at that exact moment, eyes red like he'd been crying all night. He saw my face and just knew. His voice cracked when he said, "You found it, didn't you?" I couldn't even speak, I just nodded. Jason's whole body shook. He punched the wall, hard. His knuckles split, blood smeared on the white paint. "He's sick, Mom. He's sick and she's too stupid to see it." Then he stormed back upstairs before I could even clean his hand. When David came home that night, I was waiting with the laptop open on the table. He tried to play dumb at first, said I was snooping and making drama out of nothing. But when I pulled up the screenshots, the photos, the sheer pile of evidence, his mask cracked again. He started yelling, knocking chairs over, swearing it wasn't what it looked like. He even grabbed the laptop and tried to slam it shut, but I shoved him back so hard he stumbled into the counter. "You're disgusting," I spat at him. "You're a liar, a cheater, and you went after our son's girlfriend. Do you have any idea what you've done to him?" He didn't apologize. He didn't even deny it anymore. He just started crying, loud, heaving sobs, throwing himself onto the couch like he was the victim. "You don't love me anymore, Emily. I was dying in this marriage. She gave me attention." I stood there watching this pathetic performance, feeling my rage turn into something sharper, colder. He wanted to play the victim? Fine, but I wasn't going to let him bury Jason under his filth. That night I started planning my revenge. I waited until he left for work before I moved. Standing in our kitchen with the laptop open felt like holding a smoking gun and deciding which bullet to pull first. I could have called the cops, thrown the evidence at a lawyer, dragged him into a courtroom, and let the system grind out the justice he didn't deserve, but that would have been tidy, legal, and nowhere near satisfying. I wanted him to feel the slow, smart burn of being found out by everyone who mattered. I wanted him exposed in his element. The house, the workplace, the small social circles where he bragged and winked and thought himself invulnerable. First, I split our lives where they were most visible. I changed the Wi-Fi password to something he'd never guess and hid the router in the attic. The family location app we'd used to feel safe was now my chessboard. I made copies of everything on his laptop and phone, screenshots of his messages, the selfies of him grinning beside Kayla, receipts with restaurant names and timestamps. I printed them, notches of paper crinkling like a dry fire. Paper is loud, paper is permanent. I put a folder in an envelope with the word truth written across it in my scratchy handwriting and slid it into the mailbox addressed to his boss. That afternoon I drove to Kayla's school under the pretense of dropping off a suggested reading list for freshmen. Mrs. Franklin, the guidance counselor, knows me. People in our town know my face. I use that currency. I asked for a moment to speak with Kayla in private. Her eyes were wide enough to swallow me when she stepped into the counselor's office, and I saw the way she clutched her backpack straps like a raft. I did not shout. I did not cry. I showed her the messages. Her face, which had always seemed porcelain and unbreakable, cracked into a mask of nausea and disbelief. Watching her read what I discovered was worse than seeing my husband's smugness. Watching the girl who trusted us fall apart felt like watching a vase in my own hands had dropped. That night, when David came back early because I forgot my toolbox, and I met him on the porch. I tried to laugh, to charm his way past me with that sideways grin he'd used to seduce neighbors at barbecues. I answered him with the envelope. "Delivered this to your boss at noon," I said. His face went white, then red, then violent in a matter of seconds. He shoved past me toward the door, but I stepped in front and locked it. He pounded on the wood with fists that had once held our son, screaming for me to open up, to explain myself. He ripped the framed photo of our wedding off the wall and hurled it through the living room window, glass showering the carpet like confetti at a funeral. He called Kayla's parents. He drove to her house and banged on her door, sobbing on their stoop about how he'd stolen his chance at happiness. He posted on the neighborhood group that our son was the real traitor, then used our shared bank app to try and freeze accounts. He tried to weaponize the chaos, texting our son Venom, showing up at Jason's friend's football practice to shout that everything was a lie. He was unhinged in front of anyone who would listen, telling a story where he was the wronged father and I was the manipulative witch. Each public meltdown spilled more proof that I had already sent to his workplace. The The man who'd prided himself on being a good dad shredded that mask in real time. But here's the sick little geometry of revenge. Exposure is surgical, not chaotic. I didn't humiliate him with slurs. I let his own behavior, his bruised ego, his frantic, self-centered performances do the work. He became the spectacle. People who'd once invited him to tournaments and backyard poker nights stared at him the way you look at a car that's lost control on wet pavement. Horror mixed with the inevitability of watching the crash. And Jason. He walked into the wreckage the next morning and didn't fall apart. He stood, wounds raw, and for the first time in years, I didn't need to be the only adult in the room. He helped me collect the broken glass while David screamed on the porch like a man who'd lost more than himself. He'd lost the version of him everyone trusted. Update. Some of y'all said I should post the messages publicly and burn them on burner accounts. Tempting, I know. Others in the DMs told me to lawyer up immediately. I did both in my own way. I sent the folder to his boss. No anonymity, just plain facts. And I reached out to a friend who's a paralegal to make sure everything would hold if we needed it to. A couple of you suggested cutting his truck's brakes. Nope. I want him accountable and ruined by truth, not by something that could get an innocent hurt. I've had people DM me, laughs, angry emojis, even sympathy. One older neighbor brought over a pot of soup and said, "You did the smart thing." For now, the smart thing was to let him implode, and make sure when he did, everyone saw the wreckage was his doing. Want the next update? Wait until you hear what his boss and Kayla's parents did after they read the envelope. I opened the door to the kind of chaos I had only seen in daytime soap operas, and this time it had my name on it. By noon, his boss had called a meeting and, predictably, asked for copies of everything. Within 24 hours, David was escorted from his job with security, following him like a shame parade. I watched from the kitchen window as he walked out carrying one box, jaw tight, cheeks wet with the theatrical apology. Cry he does when he wants the people to feel sorry for him. His co-workers, men who'd fist-bumped him at tailgates, turned their backs. That small shame looked good on him. It was the one honest thing he had been missing. But the world outside our living room was not a courtroom. People don't always do the right thing immediately. They gossip. They take sides. And David, God help him, decided the right move was to escalate. He started with our property. 2 nights after he was fired, I woke to the sound of someone scraping metal against paint. I threw on jeans and ran outside to find our driveway keyed in long, angry lines. His signature fury carved into my car like a threat. He'd also slashed the tires on my son's car, a bright red mess of rubber and shredded air. Jason stood there, hands slack, like a boy learning what it means to be unmoored. He held his cheek where he had hit the steering wheel earlier in a rage that had nothing to do with the steering wheel. That's when he started to weaponize everything that once mattered to him. He called neighbors, he texted old friends, he showed up at youth baseball practice to shout that I was a manipulative monster who'd stolen his life. He went to Kayla's parents and begged, on his knees in their driveway. He begged them to believe him. They locked their doors. Her mom, a petite woman in a floral apron who once waved hello over fences on trash day, told him to get up and get out. She told him with a voice that shook but didn't break that he was not welcome near her daughter. He tried to drag Jason into it. He filled our son's DMs with melodramatic messages. "You don't owe her this! She hates me! She wants to ruin us! Pick your side." Jason read them once, then deleted them. The deletion felt like a small tattoo being removed. It hurt and it left a mark. But it was the right thing. My son's silence after that was not betrayal. It was dawning clarity. And the first time in years I saw him steady and adult. I wanted him safe, not wrapped in my revenge the way you wrap a gift no one asked for. So I shifted tactics. Instead of attacking back with the blunt tools he used, shrieks, vandalism, public spectacle, I turned surgical. I compiled timelines, receipts, locations, the sushi bar where he met Kayla at midnight, the motel bill from the week she stayed late at a study group, the photo of his hand on her waist in our own kitchen. I sent them to HR again with a note. Harassment, grooming, workplace liability. I forwarded copies to the neighborhood listserv, to the PTA president, to the two people I suspected he still thought were friends. People started calling him what I'd been calling him in private. Pathetic, predatory, a liar. The neighborhood that once waved at him now crossed the street. He began to show up at my work site the way a drunk man shows up at his ex's front door. Loud, pleading, dangerous. A crew foreman told him to get lost. A cop came by. He began to ramble about lawsuits and revenge porn and how I was ruining him. It was dizzying watching him spiral, but it was necessary. He'd spun his fantasy of being alive around other people's trust. Now that trust unraveled. The worst night came when he kicked our front door in. The wood splintered in a sound that will live with me forever. He barreled into the living room, face streaked with rain and something thinner, tears or fury. He grabbed the wedding album and began tearing pages, photos rending like evidence. My hands found his wrists. We grappled on the floor between scattered photographs and a framed portrait, his ring clinking on the hardwood like a bell-tolling finality. He screamed at me that I'd set him up, then tried to shove me away. I hit him. Not a cinematic blow, just a flat, searing palm to the jaw that knocked the air out of both of us. He fell backward, stunned, then slid off the couch and sat there, blinking, suddenly smaller than the man who'd walked out for work that morning. It was ugly and real. The neighbors called the police. He didn't fight arrest. His theatrics had burned their last ticket. In the back of the squad car, he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen. Not anger, not hurt, but the raw, animal panic of a man who realized he'd truly lost everything. After he was taken away, Jason sat on the porch steps and cried. Not theatrically, not for show, but with the long, slow sobs of someone who'd had his family map redrawn overnight. I wrapped my arms around him and let him lean into me, and somewhere between the sirens and the broken wood and the ruined photographs I felt a small, cold peace. We had survived the betrayal. We had also survived the mess of living truth out loud. I'm not done. There are still court papers to file, still lawyers to meet, still a trial of reputation and custody to wage. But the marrow of that night, in the way the police lights painted our kitchen a lurid blue, something shifted. I was no longer the woman who covered over things to keep the peace. I was the woman who picked up the pieces and made sure everyone saw who'd broken them. The morning after the birthday explosion, I woke up to the sound of glass shattering downstairs. Jason was already gone. He left before sunrise to crash at his best friend's house, and my heart nearly stopped because I knew who it had to be. David. I ran down to the kitchen, and there he was, barefoot, shirtless, and absolutely feral. He had smashed one of my favorite mugs, the one Jason made me at summer camp when he was 10. Shards were all over the tile, coffee dripping down the cabinet doors. He was pacing like a caged animal, muttering to himself. When he noticed me, his face twisted into something I'll never forget. You turned my own son against me. You ruined everything. Do you even know what you've done? I wanted to laugh in his face, but I was too stunned. I turned Jason against him. He seduced Jason's girlfriend. He lied, cheated, manipulated, but somehow I was the villain in his delusional spiral. He picked up a chair and hurled it at the wall. The drywall cracked, pictures fell, glass everywhere. The sound must have carried because a neighbor knocked on the front door a few minutes later, asking if everything was okay. David went absolutely berserk. He yanked the door open, screamed at the poor woman to mind her own business, then slammed it so hard one of the frames rattled off the wall, and then he turned on me. He got close. Too close. His voice dropped low and dangerous. You think you can humiliate me? You think you can destroy my family? You'll regret this, Emily. For the first time, I was actually afraid of him. Not just disgusted. Afraid. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my phone trying to record him. He saw it and lunged, grabbing for it, but I managed to kick it under the counter before he could snatch it. That was my breaking point. I screamed at him to get out, to never come back. But instead of leaving, he stormed upstairs and started tearing through drawers. Our bedroom, Jason's room, even the hall closet. When I tried to stop him, he shoved past me so hard I hit the wall. My shoulder still aches. By the time he finally stormed out, the house looked like a tornado had ripped through it. Clothes everywhere, broken glass, overturned furniture. And then the text started. Pages and pages of them. Some begging me to take him back because he was lost. Some raging, calling me a whore, saying Jason was weak and pathetic. Then my blood ran cold. Screenshots of Kayla. Photos I hadn't seen before. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just reckless, he was dangerous. He was holding on to things that could destroy not only her reputation, but Jason's too. I knew then. My revenge wasn't optional anymore. It was survival. Update. Y'all were right. Document everything. Call the cops and don't try to handle it privately. I got 100 DMs after the last post. Some telling me to burn him on social media, others begging me to be careful. A nice retired teacher across the street dropped off a legal pad and said, record dates, names, times. So I did. I printed every screenshot, logged every call, every neighbor who heard him screaming, every person at his workplace who'd say he'd been off for months. You told me to make the truth undeniable. That's exactly what I aimed for. The revenge stopped being about shame and started being about safety, ours and Kayla's. I met with Kayla's mom in the diner by the high school. She brought a folder of her own, receipts for late-night rides, text printouts she'd saved, a receipt from a motel with a timestamp that matched one of the photos on David's phone. We combined folders and walked into the police station together. The desk sergeant's face was flat for a minute, then the kind of professional hardness I wanted. They opened a file, took statements, and asked us to stay away from each other while they investigated. David didn't go quietly. He turned into a machine of a dramatic escalation. The kind you see in movies where the villain refuses to accept fire and instead throws gasoline. He tried to pull friends into his narrative, showed up at civic meetings to yell about family values, and posted half-truths on the neighborhood group that made less and less sense the more he wrote. He started leaving things on our porch at night. Notes that smelled like cheap cologne, a single glove, a Polaroid of our house taken from the street. I filed those with the police. Each creepy gift he left was another line in the permanent file. Then he decided to go after my work. He called my boss and left a voicemail filled with lies about my behavior, tried to send anonymous evidence to contractors, and showed up at a daytime site meeting to cause a scene. He thought chaos would look like power. Instead, it looked like someone who couldn't read a room. Contractors stopped talking to him. Two of his so-called buddies refused to pick up his calls. Exposure had done its slow work. His social capital bled out. The sweetest move wasn't some petty sabotage. It was quiet, calculated, and surgical. I gave copies of his messages, the receipts folder with everything laid out, to 3 places that mattered. The HR department where he'd been working. They reopened their investigation. Kayla's school administration so they could protect students, and the local paper. I didn't write the headline. The reporter did. Seeing his text referring to Kayla as baby girl printed across a neighborhood column was a small, crystalline moment of justice. People who'd smiled at him in the hardware store now avoided him in the aisle. He responded by smashing my windshield one night. That was the physical line. I called the cops. He was charged with vandalism, harassment, and violating the temporary restraining order I'd filed that afternoon. In custody, he sobbed and begged anyone who listened to believe his version. It was pathetic and terrifying at once. The same man who used to charm neighbors now sounded like a man scraping for oxygen. I'm not naive. There are court dates, depositions, and the slow bureaucracy of divorce ahead. But standing outside the courthouse after his arraignment, watching him escorted in, something cold and clean settled in me. We made it visible. We made it real. That's where power starts to shift. That school board meeting was the act, the place he chose to perform his last awful performance, because he thought he could crowd surf sympathy. He showed up like he always did when he wanted an audience. Pressed shirt, cheap cologne, eyes hungry for an audience to hang on his every word. The agenda that night was about after-school supervision, parents, teachers, bored teens. I sat 3 rows back with Jason and Kayla's mom, every papered receipt and screenshot folded into a little packet in my lap like a talisman. He got up during public comment and started. Slow at first, that practiced rasp he uses when he wants pity. My family's being torn apart, he said. My wife is destroying me. Then fingers in pockets, claws out. He named names, threw half-truths, accused me of fabricating messages, of stalking, of breaking his things to make him look bad. The room hummed. People glanced at each other. He wanted gasps. He wanted the room to pivot and turn in his favor. So I stood. I walked to the microphone while he babbled about betrayal and ruin, and I read. Calm, clipped, every line of the timeline we'd made. Times, places, motel names, dates. I described the envelope I'd handed his boss, the HR meeting, the police file number. I read Kayla's mother's statements. I read his messages where he called Kayla baby girl. I watched the color drain out of his face like someone had turned down the lights, and then he lost it. He jumped off the bench and charged the podium like a man who'd mistaken rage for courage. He shoved a parent who was filming him, grabbed at the mic, and when a teacher stepped between us, he shoved her against the wall. The physicality of it, the thud of bodies, the metallic clatter of the microphone stand, felt unreal. People screamed. A couple of fathers lunged to restrain him. Jason moved like a lived-in reflex, stepping between his father and me, hands shaking but steady. I had never seen him more adult. Police had already been called. They arrived in minutes and cuffed him. He was screaming then, about humiliation, about conspiracy, about losing his family, but it sounded small and animal now. The news vans that had been parked outside for the minor school drama snapped photos that evening. A man in handcuffs, a wedding photo still clutched in the grass near the curb. Petals of glass from the window we'd fixed last month scattered like confetti. Legally, the dominoes fell exactly as they should have. Vandalism, harassment, violating the temporary restraining order, assault at the school meeting, charges stacked up cleanly, each one another brick in the wall between him and the life he wanted back. HR finalized termination papers that week. References evaporated. He lost his place in the contractor rotation, and more quietly, the neighbors' nods. There were restraining orders extended. He isn't allowed within 100 yards of our house, of Jason's friends' houses, of the high school. He made the choice to go scorched earth. The consequence was that Earth would not take him back. The sweetest revenge wasn't a stunt or a rumor. It was seeing him stripped of the cloak of normalcy he'd worn for so long. Watching people who once invited him to barbecues cross the street when they saw him at the gas station. Watching Jason, weeks later, stand in my kitchen and not flinch while he told me, "I don't have to fix him." That sentence landed like a prayer. We went to therapy, Jason, Kayla, and me, because truth doesn't heal everything. It exposes you to what the cold, and you have to learn to build warmth again. Kayla moved 2 towns over with her mom. She's enrolled at community college and seeing a counselor. Jason patched his friend group back together slowly. He got a scholarship offer for art school, and the other night painted a small canvas and gave it to me, an abstract mess of blues and sharp white lines. He called it Fracture. I'm not pretending this is tidy. There will be court dates, depositions, the slow, bureaucratic grind of divorce. There is paperwork that smells like forever changes. But there is also a small, fierce freedom. I no longer hide the cracks under polish. I lit the truth like a candle and let it burn where it needed to, and in the ruins, among the broken pictures, the slashed tires, and the shredded illusions, something honest grew. I am angry. I am tired. I am also oddly fierce and clean. If you're reading this and you're tempted to silence yourself, document. Save receipts. Tell someone. The quiet is where cheating and manipulation live. Shout if you must. Make the truth loud enough to carry. That's what saved us.